Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Dressero.
And this week, we watched Men in Black and Men in Black International. Technically a part 4, but also kind of a redo.
Yeah, kind of a redo.
Yeah.
Because they redid the whole Men in Black agency backstory too.
Yeah.
Which was better, I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things about that movie were better. Okay, so Men in Black, the first one, I watched this when it came out. I fucking loved it. I would watch it just whenever because it's just a silly, whatever, nonsensical alien get 'em movie. And I was really stoked on the new one. I just hadn't watched it yet because I love Tessa Thompson so much. And I love
Tessa Thompson.
And I was like, I'm sorry, Valkyrie and Thor are in another buddy movie together?
Literally.
Like, stop. I'm here for this.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I never watched it. But all of my expectations were met and exceeded with that film.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm excited to talk about that one because I feel fine about it. And that's kind of it.
Oh, really? I thought it was so fun.
I'm excited to get into it. And I honestly think it's not like a content discrepancy, but more of just a personal taste discrepancy, possibly.
Okay.
Because it's not, there's nothing within it that I'm like, well, this was a mess. It's more of just like, okay. Like, I recognize that for me, it's not as interesting, but just aesthetically, not content.
I didn't necessarily need some of the forced romance moments.
Oh my God, yeah.
That was a little bit I mean, they're buds. Just let them be buds.
Just let them be platonic. Why do you have to oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, I do have some notes. I've got some stuff to say.
Should we get into it?
Let's do it. Let's just jump right in. This is going to be a fun week. NYPD officer James Edwards III is actively chasing down a perfectly normal subject, only to find out there's nothing normal about him at all. He's an alien. After being laughed at by his superiors, Agent K from the Men in Black shows up and immediately neuralizes James, a pivotal tactic used by his agency that erases the subject's memory, allowing the agent to gaslight the victim into believing the narrative of the agent's choosing. K then proceeds to offer freshly neuralized James a job with the incredibly capitalist alien tracking shadow organization, MIB, for the small, inconsequential price of his literal existence in society. James accepts the offer and becomes Agent J, so original, while his mentor K shows him the ropes, kind of.
Meanwhile, a literal big-ass sentient cockroach alien illegally lands on Earth, kills and wears a gross man's skin, and begins his search for a marble that contains an entire galaxy. He kills a few highborn aliens under MIB's protection, which draws Agent K and J to meet Laurel, the mortician. After far too many double entendres, J and K head out to catch the cockroach, and the movie is over. JK, Laurel is kidnapped, and KJ goes to save her and the rest of the world from the big bad bug.
Love.
Bad bug.
The JK joke is fantastic.
Thank you.
K and J,
and
J
then
and
KJ,
K, JK.
which is a, karaoke jockey. So, try to.
Hey.
Also, in the next one, they are H&M.
Are they really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my God. What was the one? Which one was it with? Oh, fuck. Maybe it was the third one with Andy Warhol where they go back in time. That's the third one.
I never watched the third one.
I only remember it because I love Bill Hader, and Bill Hader plays Andy Warhol. So I was like, ooh.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever saw the second and third. I think I've only ever seen the first one. Because I hadn't seen International
I swear I've
until
seen the
this
second
time.
one.
Maybe it would jog our memory. Maybe it's like something we saw and just forgot. I think so, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things is bringing Kay out of retirement where he's happy.
Yeah. But I was bummed because who plays the mortician? She doesn't come back, right?
I don't think so.
They do a whole setup for her and Will to be the new Men in Black, where it's no cis white men, and you're like, this is fantastic. And then she doesn't
And
come
then they
back for the
just
second one. And you're
bring
like, wait.
back the cishet white men.
Yeah, where you're like,
The
oh.
old cishet white man. I mean, a lot of films in the 90s did that, where they set up like this amazing character, and then for the sequel, they're not there. Like Blade, I forget her name, but the lead, the romantic interest for Blade is fucking cool, and she's like a phlebotomist, and she like is actually the reason that a lot of things happen and go their way, and like fucking into it. And then she's just gone in the second one, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why do you set up these, like, they bring back fucking everybody else except for the women.
I mean, honestly, whenever this would happen, I would always just assume it's like a contract thing. Like maybe somebody was already contractually obligated to do something else, and it's like,
I mean, it happens too often to women. For
that's
it to
true.
Be a contract.
But what
thing.
I think that might be is like a payment thing. Where like, you're not paying me enough for this. They're like, okay, well, we're not going to pay you more. They're like, well, then I'm not doing it. They're like, that's fine.
I mean, the women aren't even written into it. They're just like, and there's not even like a line of like, so it's like, it's just a complete afterthought. I mean, do we expect Hollywood to think about women? No.
But it does seem like such like a, like even apart from the misogyny of it, it does seem like a creative hiccup, like a glaring mistake. You know what I mean?
It
like
happens too often.
It happens too often. But
for it to be like a thing, yeah.
But that's why, like, even us, we're not invested in this IP, but it's both like, yeah, what didn't she come back? They set it up. It doesn't make sense that she's not a part of the story moving forward.
She was one of the best parts of the movie, too, where she's just like, I prefer dead people, fuck you. Like,
her character was so cool. Like, she was so casual. She was so confident. Like, every time before they would just, like, neuralize the shit out of her, she's like, there's aliens. I knew it. Fuck yeah. I've been thinking about this, and I knew it, and I'm so on board for this. Let's go. And they're like, no. She's sick. I loved her.
But a lot of the writing was, for her, was there to, like, serve the men, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's, like, standing next to Will Smith, and she's like, oh, my God, you have such pretty eyes. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, where did that come from? And then, like, there's, like, a bunch of double entendres about getting inside of her, right? Or, like, feeling around in there. And then when she's literally a hostage, she's trying to say, like, hey, you should look down there. And he's like, oh, you're pussy? Like, let me just swim on a girl. I mean, like, if you want to do it on the first date, that's fine. And she's like, no, you literal piece of shit. Like, I am being held hostage right now. You need to look down here. And he's like, oh, I'll get there. Don't you worry. And, like, I hated that a lot.
There's a lot with this movie that I hated just in terms of, like, that, where it's so clearly, like, male gazy, written for men, by men, entirely because of men. Type stuff.
But she, as herself, could have been such a cool character if she was given a little bit of room to,
if she was given room to play. She was like, her whole, like,
to be a giant sex joke. That's all she was.
Even her, like, kind of low voice, she was kind of like giving a bit of a goth vibe. Yeah. She was like hot and confident and cool, like literally the coolest person in the room. Even in the face of danger, she's like, fuck. Like, she is sick, but then every time she's around them, or every time she has any length of dialogue, it is like, hey, do you want to fuck? Or, hey, let's fuck. And you're like, oh, what?
And
what?
How do they repay her for getting the information and getting what they need from her? They neuralize her. They erase her memory, and nothing is there anymore, which I do want to go into quite a bit, but I have a little bit more to say about women in this movie because I'm very pissed off. Because, like, so the mortician is, like, the only woman, basically, other than the wife, who is crazy, like, abused, right, by her husband, who literally, our introduction to him, so we don't feel bad about him, like, being killed or whatever, is he say, girl, you've either been hit too much or too little. Did you poison me? You're useless. My truck is the only fucking good thing. And then, like, at the end, like, I don't know, then she's, like, laughed at because the cops didn't believe her. And even in that scene where they go and, like, talk to her, she's played for laughs, where she's like, she's kind of crazy. And what do they do when they get what they need from her? They fucking neuralize her again.
But
like,
I think the most interesting...
And then there's, like, the woman that Kay was into, who's like, he's been fucking stalking her for so long. And he's like, oh, she's unmarried. Oh, she's this. She's waited for me. And I'm like, fucking hate all of you.
I think when I was younger, or at least obviously the intention of like, say that scene with the farmer's wife, it's supposed to like, I do like that they set Vincent D'Onofrio up to be like an asshole, and then she's like, Edgar, what is it? And he's like, get your fat butt back inside or whatever. Like he's a trash guy. He sucks.
Absolutely.
He's garbage. So I love that setup. But then truly when they show up, they kind of don't, I mean, they're not like as overt shitty to her, but they're not really better. And I think on first pass, especially being younger, I was like, oh yeah, like they're believing her and blah blah blah, but it's like not really. Like if we're
she's
looking
a little
at the
kooky
text,
because she lives in the in the sticks, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's here, so like it kind of lends like, I don't know, just like the way they framed her at all was kind of a joke. So it's like,
yeah.
like, and she doesn't really even like talk about the abuse or anything. She just kind of like expects it, like, oh, this is normal. Like, this is my life. You know, there's no, it was a bad characterization.
But again, I think that's one of those things where it's like in a lot of male-centric scripts or like stories written by men are allowed to be nuanced and women aren't. Like
Absolutely.
men are allowed to have these sort of intersectional feelings and sort of dichotomous ways of seeing the world. They're allowed to fail and thrive, whereas most of the women are written as one-dimensional, and that one dimension is an objectified sex robot or somebody to look at. Like it's all wrapped in the idea of sex because it is a heteronormative cis male lens that we're looking through the world at, because that's who's
I mean,
writing the
Kay's
thing.
woman is still unmarried, right?
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
is that,
and looking
was
off-
that was that his wife before? And that I think the implication was that like they were together, and then he gave her, like, he left that life to go here, but he still thinks about her. And even though she's been neuralized, whenever, like, that moment where she's like looking at the sky, he's like, she remembers me.
No, I think they get married after the.
But I think they get remarried, but in the world, because she doesn't remember and neither does he. It's like them, because he was like in a coma or whatever.
He was in a coma, and like supposedly he was in a coma and she was his person, but they weren't married or anything, right? So he just let her off into the ether, like stringing her along for all of these years, and then when he comes back, then it's like, cool, now let's get married and go to the Bahamas and all of that. So he made her wait her whole life and was like testing her, kind of like, oh, well, she's still there. Oh, she's still unmarried. Because it wasn't like he wasn't wearing a ring. There was no like, which a man in that position would continue to wear that ring, right? And if like, so he specifically said she's unmarried, right?
Yeah.
And he's still like creeping on her and using all of these. It's so gross.
I feel less gross about that only because it does seem like he's who, because like I feel like anytime they framed that dynamic, it was always around like the what did you give up? Like I
mean,
think when
sure,
Will
but
shows up, it's I mean, not to say that it's
why
any
did
better.
she have to be unmarried? Why did he have to like be? I mean, for him to just constantly be checking in on her like that and like gazing at her and all of this, like he gave that up. That was his choice. And after however many years he's been with the MIB, there's an invasion of privacy that I mean,
at that
that's
point
fucking stalker behavior.
At that point there's no relation there anymore.
You gave this up. It was your choice. You need to give this up. You don't need to string her along. Like they should have said like, oh, he died, in a car crash, rather than, oh, he's in a coma or something. Like he already, like, to me, that shows that he kind of planned this, because fucking everybody else, like, they erase you so you never exist. Why was it that he was allowed to come back? And why was it just all of a sudden like, oh, everything's here. Like, you get to do this. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense to me.
Maybe that is just like a plot hole, because I thought that they neuralized her also. And that's like, it's like she's just out to do. And so then when they neuralized him, they told him that he'd been in a coma, and they told her that he'd been in a coma, and he woke up, and they were both like, in the way that they like gaslight and tell these stories. No, like it makes it more real to the story.
Sure. Even if they neuralized or whatever, they told this woman that he was in a coma, and probably you can't go visit him. You can't do whatever. So like literally left her hanging for all of these years. Like, and is still fucking creeping on her. I have a problem with that. I don't
Yeah.
like that at all. Either way, it's fucking gross and messy. And the whole neuralizer thing is really gross and messy because, like, they talk about, like, the mortician had been neuralized several times and, like, does this cause brain damage or anything? Like, oh, we don't know. Like, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
So they don't give a shit about her or the people that they're neuralizing, right? But, like, that's, like, a throwaway line. And then later on, like, in International, the next movie, we realize that it does actually have really bad psychological
like effects,
side effects,
like side effects,
because his, like, whole person is kind of broken because he can't remember this thing that's, like, this pivotal moment in his life that everybody knows him and remembers him for and by.
Yeah.
Like, so we've established in the canon that it does have certain psychological effects that are really detrimental, but they still don't give a shit about anybody, and they keep fucking using this.
No. And
Also, everybody wears sunglasses. What the fuck? Like, so many people would not be neuralized.
That's the whole thing. Even watching it again, I think part of what's supposed to be like the funniness is how cavalier they are with such severe subjects, like the destruction of like in this one specifically, like the destruction of a city block or people possibly getting killed, or the effects of like these things are like, oh yeah, we actually don't really know what it does. Maybe, who knows? Anyways, just do it and we'll move on and it's fine. We have to get the job done. The cavalier aspect to a lot of these very, very dangerous things that they're doing, I think is supposed to be played for laughs, but in the context if we were looking at this from a real place, like a real world, like if this was the real world, they would just be like nasty fucking cops.
I mean,
like,
they kind of are.
They kind of already are, I know. Who just like
literally
go around, who cares?
They pull over the alien who's out of his bounds, right? And his wife is giving birth in the back seat where she is like literally back there, like doing the breathing, doing the screaming thing. And they don't even acknowledge her, don't even see her, because they don't like women and they don't want to see them and they're not to be taken seriously. It's only the men. But then that segues into our other conversation about aliens and right from the get-go.
So this is a bigger conversation about like migrants and refugees and asylum seekers and people from other countries who come to America. And this is a big conversation about that immigration process and how aliens very clearly from scene number 1 are surrogates. And the term alien itself is already a loaded phrase. If we're not talking about extraterrestrial beings, in the general lexicon, the term aliens for immigrants is a derogatory, or kind of has become that since, for like asylum seekers and migrants and what have you, people from who come to America. Very clearly, first scene, it's like folks from Mexico trying to come to America, and they're like pulled over, and one of them, oh my God, it's an alien. Get it? It's a double entendre. He's both an alien and an alien, and you're like, what? Okay. Wait now, hold on. Like, I think as a kid, I remember being like, oh, haha. But what a
choice.
Thank you. What a fucking choice. Like, that is scene number 1. That is first and foremost the scene. Side note before we like get fully into that, I don't know why. I think I know why, but whatever. The alien in that scene who's holding like the broomstick head under the coat, I, as a like 7-year-old, identified so hard with that alien.
Really?
Yes. That idea where it's like, I don't know, maybe it's the gay thing, who knows, but there's like a performativeness where like, he's like, you don't speak Spanish, huh? He's like, oh yeah, for sure. Like that whole like putting on fronts and like you're trying to just blend into this thing, and then they like pull it off. He's like, yeah, this is just me, sorry. And then that whole scene, it resonated something in my brain that I remember so clearly as a kid watching it today, where I was like, a couple days ago, and I was like, whoa, that was me. I'm like, wait, what? Brain, what are you doing? Yeah, it really did unlock like a very particular feeling from my childhood rewatching this. So that's the whole thing. But yes, the whole movie is practically an allegory for that. And the way that the United States and the system as it stands treats those folks who are just trying to say seek asylum or find safety or just exist. Like they're just trying to exist, and the MIB is literally like, hey, you're on parole essentially. You have to stay in Manhattan or what, like you cannot leave New York. And it's like, oh, he's leaving. We got to go catch him. Like they're just fucking alien cops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Truly. And they're not even like, there's that conversation of like, oh, well, you guys, like, who do you work for? And they like are even worse than cops because they're like capitalist like cops where like their paycheck literally comes from patents that they hold on shit like Velcro and tape and everything. And they're like, we don't bother with government because we don't want them getting into our stuff. You know,
they're above
like,
the law.
Yeah. So they're above the law. They're trying to pretend like they're, like a witness protection program kind of, but they just don't want to be questioned or asked any questions by anybody. Yeah.
And the fact that like you said, what is funding their entire program is stolen technology. Mm-hmm. It's stolen property. It is property of other people and people that they've arrested that they are then, big air quotes, discovering for the first time and reselling.
And like they're clearly not good people because when Kay leaves, he says he doesn't want to remember his time working for the organization. Like it is a traumatizing thing for him. He does not want to remember this. This is not who he wants to think of himself as. Yeah.
It wasn't a good time for him. Mm-mm. Like, given everything, obviously the context of like having to give up your life and dedicating your time to this agency as a nobody, as an erased citizen, he doesn't want to remember. It's so, like, you're right. It's so clear at the end. He's like, yeah, I don't. Just do it. I don't want to remember this. Mm-hmm. Like, I have some good memories, yeah, but this, I don't need it. Go. And you're like, whoa, well, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't want to remember any of it because it's not only, like, I'm sure there's so much that he's not proud of. So fucking much that he wishes that he could erase or that is, like, really messy and gross. Like, how do you sleep with yourself when you're a cop? I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, his whole job was, like, policing these registered aliens that, like, most of them, I mean, like, sure, there were the celebrity ones like Dennis Rodman, ha ha ha, right?
And Isaac Mizrahi was on there. I was like,
and
what is
Sylvester
happening?
Stallone.
And Sylvester Stallone. I was like, that's so funny.
But like most of the people are like taxi cab drivers and pawn shop owners and like newsstand, and so it's like literally the lower class. And
it's also because of this allegory that they set up, it's so clearly non-white.
Yes.
Non-white folks, non-white poor folks who are performing as alien in this story. So it's not even like just the first scene. It's the entire allegory of the world that they're building for the narrative. That like poor brown and black folks are aliens. And you're like, oh.
And they have to go through 84,000 steps to get anything. I mean, even like the bug when he goes to the mortuary, right? Like the MIB just walked in there and like, hey, we're going in here. Like, you know, like, here's my badge. Like, because as long as you have a badge or you act like you're supposed to be there, like, I realize there's no consequences or like they like, who is in charge? What's the hierarchy? Nobody double checks. But like the bug goes in there and he's like, all right, I need this. And he's like, great, you need to fill out this and do that. And here's this. And then you need to do a thing and you need to get over here and you got to put this over here. And like everybody else, like, you know, operating in this world has to do that except the MIB. You know?
The iconic quote from that scene.
Oh, yes.
A pet cat. It's just, it's so good. And the fact that it's like David Cross also who's behind the counter. Is young David. That's just so funny. God, Vincent D'Onofrio is so good in this movie. He's
incredible.
So
such a good performance.
Fucking good. His character works insane. Like him just looking around and like the way that he walks, like everything about it's like a bug in a suit. He's a fucking bug in a suit, and it's
Nailed
so
it.
good. Oh, one moment still made me sad, and it made me sad as a kid too. When he pretends to be a waiter and he kills the king or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the cat is still there.
and the cat goes to the morgue.
Oh,
I cried.
with yes. Oh my God. As it, like, I mean, obviously we're watching it again. I'm like, yeah, this is really sad. But even as a kid, those scenes are just imprinted in my brain. And I'm like, oh, I wonder why I like the cat. And it's like, oh, because it's fucking sad. Like, these were really sad moments, and you remember them very clearly because they were sad. And that's why they're like in my brain. And it's like, oh, that sucks. And I know that like he ends up dying, but like the real king was like the little guy inside the machine face.
Right.
And so he didn't necessarily get stabbed, which also to me, I'm like, wait, how and why did he die? He didn't get stabbed.
I was also thinking the same thing. But
he's an autonomous little being. Like, this is an autonomous creature that is in an obvious mech suit. How'd they die? You know what I mean? Like, They just ran out of air. I don't know. Either way, they die, and it's very sad, and the cat's like sad, and it's sad.
It's all sad.
It's all sad. Yeah, the main story, like, I still found enjoyment from it, and I think a lot of it was, I mean, big part of the conversation for the podcast, a lot of it was nostalgia, because it was a big movie for me as a kid, this first one.
Yeah.
And so just with that in mind, it did, even as I'm like, this is a fucking messy allegory. Like, this is, what a weird take, what a bad take. Fuck, I guess I didn't realize that was the story. Even with all of that in mind, as I'm watching it, I'm still finding a lot of joy in it because of the time that I watched it as a kid, where I'm like, oh yeah, and then this, and then boom, and I was still loving it, despite like my critical eye being like, ooh,
oh yeah,
what's that? Now.
I mean, watching it this time, I was like, I mean, it was still like, I knew it was coming, so it's like, oh, this is so silly. This is going to be right here. I got this. But like, I realized that there's not a lot of story, and there's not a lot to the characters, like, at all. Like, Kay is just an old jaded guy. There's like literally nothing to him. The J is just the fish out of water. So we like are there to understand what the MIB is or whatever, but like, and we just see him like literally regurgitating the learned language and behavior that he is like around without knowing what it means or questioning it. So like, that's like the only note that I have for him. But like, as far as characters go, there's not a lot for anybody. There's not a lot at all to this movie.
There really isn't. And you know what, Jess? I love that. Especially for a movie that has almost nothing to say. It's a lot of action scenes, some really good performances, and some fun CG and like practical makeup stuff. Apart from that, there really isn't anything to it, and I love it. Because to me, don't spend 30 minutes on Will Smith. Don't spend 40 minutes on Tommy Lee Jones. Who are they? He's a disgruntled employee who works here as kind of a cop. Cool. He's an actual cop who joins this and is the fish out of water. Cool. That's literally all I need to know. Throw them in.
The bad guy,
let me see
just a big-ass cockroach.
What
does he want to do with that galaxy? Who the fuck knows?
Eat it, maybe? Who cares? He wants it.
He's a bug that wants it.
Yeah. And so for that, I'm just like, yeah, let him go. He wants it. They need it. Go. Play the game. I want to see you guys play it.
When they pick up the World Weekly News and the Sun and everything, and they're like, this is the best investigative reporting on the planet. Yeah. That got me so good. I knew it was coming, and it was like, it's such a good line.
It's a great joke. And there are some really good jokes in here, too. I think the whole, like, slapstick humor of Will showing up to MIB and, like, taking the test, where like he's in the booth trying to like with his pencil breaks and he's
then,
like it rips,
dragging the
table drag and the loud screeching, like him being like, you want to get in on this table, like all of those moments, like he's so funny, it's perfect and so well written and so funny. And then even like the target practice where he only shoots one person.
Yes.
And then being like, why did you shoot the little white girl? He's like, well, let's put it into
quantum
perspective.
Physics.
And it's more of and I like that.
And
like,
it was like really good, deep analytical thing where everybody else is like shooting monsters. And he's like, no, he has a cold. He's got this. But the little girl with the quantum physics thing, what's up with that?
empathy and realistic observation. And I do wish that
As
that was
a cop?
more so unrealistic. No cops have that. I wish that that was more at the forefront of the narrative. Where like that was obviously like a really good scene where they like set this up. Like we're getting really good insight into his character. He's bringing a new perspective to this that these other people don't. Obviously, he's the outlier, and that's a fucking yes. But they don't really dip into that later.
He doesn't get to use that intelligence for anything, really. He, like, every once in a while, he'd be like, so is the neuralizer safe? Like, and like, oh, well, we should, let's give this person a happier memory. Let's do that. But, like, he doesn't ever get to use his head for anything. It's just like, squish bug is it.
So that's actually one of the biggest things that I liked about the next one is, and we'll get into it, but in this one, instead of ascribing like, or at least presenting his way of seeing the world, he tries to assimilate into the already established structure of what is and not questioning things. Whereas Tessa Thompson is the exact opposite. Given this prescriptive, this is the way things are done, she'll still be like, well, I know these things, so that's technically no, because this is wrong. And they're like, oh, I guess you're right. She comes in and kind of changes things with her unique perspective, whereas Will Smith doesn't.
Yeah, no, he's just kind of like, oh, I got a unique perspective. But as the movie goes on, instead of like using his own words, he just starts to regurgitate that of the organization itself.
He starts performing like the other people and not being this individual. And that's, I wish it like had taken the other turn where he's like, no, actually it should be different. And you're like, yeah, that's like a better take. That's a more interesting version of the story. Either way. Squishbug. There was a line in here that I feel like clearly illustrates this movie's perspective on immigration and asylum seekers and migrants in general. When bad alien ship is coming to town, and these other aliens start leaving Earth, Rip Torn, which never is that name not going to be good. Rip Torn says, I think Will or Tommy Lee asks, like, hey, why are people leaving? His response is, why does a rat desert a ship? And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I glanced over that line.
Yeah, it's very quick. And I'm like, oh, I feel like that's the perspective of the movie. Like, already, like, allegorically, that's how they're being portrayed. But this line is very clearly, like, aliens are rats and aliens as a surrogate for this entire group of people in the real physical world. It feels like that's just the perspective. And this is, like, the line that sinks the key into that idea. And I'm like, fuck.
Well, and I guess, yeah, because, like, also, when you think about the aliens that we saw, like they're in their alien form, right? We saw the first guy at the border, right? That like was like fine at first, and then somebody looked at him funny, and then he fucking went off and was about to kill them, which make no sense to me at all. Like he was just like, what the fuck ever. It's like, okay, we're just gonna have him blow up. It's gonna be great. So like just unhinged, unstable, kind of, right? Like with that narrative, and then the like 5 aliens that are always around the coffee pot with like the cigarettes. Yeah, like that is that was incredibly racist.
There's a lot. Like
the pug.
The pug.
Which I did love. He had his little familiar. That was so great.
So cute. Yeah. I love the pug. But yeah, it is that it like just the more I think about this line too, the more it's just like the idea that like rats are like, and again, this is only in this context, like the idea that like rats on a ship are like vermin and freeloaders is sort of like the context is like this weird racist, like faux patriotic perspective of like, I'm American and anybody who's not from here is a freeloader on the government. Like that whole conservative, like toxic, fucking don't tread on me snack bullshit, like weird gun-toting asshole shit. Like that is where it feels like this is coming from this like patriotic perspective of America first. And it's like the more I spend time in this like line, the more I'm like, oh man, like that really is kind of a lot of this movie in the way that it portrays these people. That's like the whole movie, kind of.
I mean, anybody that isn't a man and that isn't American is treated like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 100%.
It's so messy. And I mean, even like the Tony Shalhoub scene, which obsessed with and love Tony Shalhoub. Iconic. But like the pawn shop and like, they're just like, it's like these beat cops going in and like causing a ruckus amongst like these sort of low income communities. Like, fuck. And then like he literally just blows his head off. And like, that's the joke.
It's like haha, it's going to grow back.
He'll just grow back. You don't get it yet. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, what actually is happening? I mean, is I hate how much that stings. Is that line forever in my brain? Yeah. 100%. As a kid, was it the funniest thing in the world? Absolutely. Like, obsessed with. But even still, it's like, oh, there's a lot in this movie that's... And for that reason, I'm so happy it's so short. Like, literally, just give me the story and get the fuck out of there. Like, that was the whole vibe, was show me, by the time I'm even invested, we got 15 minutes left, knock it out, credits, Will Smith song, let's go. I'm off. We're leaving.
I do love that song.
It's a great song
in my brain.
And the music video with the alien dancing in the warehouse.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love. There are also like a lot of fat jokes here.
Oh
too.
yeah.
Like, and I was like taken aback by that. I was like, oh. Okay. Oh yeah, you're half the man. I am half the man you are. Fucking lay off the donuts. And I was just like, oh my god, like that's also like pivotal to our understanding of Jay, because it's one of the first fucking things out of his mouth.
Yeah, it is a really gross way to set a character. But the thing is, it's so intentional because especially at that time in the general pop culture, it's 97, right? 97. America hates fat people. The culture, like that is such a popular way of seeing the world, and kind of still is. Fat people are disgusting and are nasty, and that is a character flaw, and it's a defect. If you're fat, you're wrong and bad. Always. I mean, back then it was
no consequence on the story, and that character was there for literally 5 seconds, and like it was just fodder for literally no reason.
Because I think from the perspective of an audience, like especially for that time, how are we going to get the audience to resonate with this lead character? Oh, we just saw Will Smith, like big, strong athlete who's so fast and so athletic and whatever. We're like, yeah, he's the hero. Let's root for him. Suddenly this like bigger cop shows up and is like, and not that I'm like rooting for this cop, but like at the same, him being the butt of a joke because of his physical appearance is so just boring and like nonsensical. The way that they played it too, just to be like, yeah, the audience is with us because like, yeah, you should call him fat. Fucking what a joke. And it's like, I feel like it's a way that from a writing perspective, it was supposed to get the audience to like identify with Will Smith, because it is like kind of one of the first scenes with him. There's like the chase sequence, and then immediately in that room, and he's like, "You're a fat ass," and you're like, "Yeah, you tell him, Will." Like, oh,
well, and the whole reason that that Kay wants to test Jay is because he was fast enough to keep up with an alien, so he could just run fast, so he's fine. So that's also a reward for being fit.
Yeah.
Right. And
exactly.
So it was lazy writing.
It's lazy writing. And it's also just, it is such an unchecked aggression because of the way that our culture perceives fatness as a whole, where it's just like, yeah, it's acceptable to demean fat people or bigger people or however. That's fine. Do it. They're bad and they should feel bad. And it's like, wow, it's learned behavior. It's taught behavior. It's part of the fucking curriculum here, apparently. My God. Apparently, yeah. It's nasty.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this movie because there is nothing to it.
I also don't have anything else to say. Once again, I think, here's my only thing. Once again, a Danny Elfman moment. That's it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. That was him.
And then in the second one, too, he also did the scoring for the second one, or for the reboot. Anyways, let's scoot on over. Let's do it.
A young girl named Molly and her family have an alien encounter, which prompts MIB to show up and neuralize her parents. Unbeknownst to the agents, Molly helps the alien escape and retains her memory as it's believed she was asleep the whole time. Flash forward 20 plus years, and we see Molly's obsession with space has now been amplified and coupled with her search and insatiable desire to find and become part of the organization that neuralized her parents. When the opportunity arises, she jumps in headfirst and, after a rocky start, lands herself a probationary position as Agent M in MIB, where she is sent to London to identify an issue within that branch of the agency.
Immediately upon arrival, she inserts herself in the mission of resident hunk and hero Agent H, which turns out to be more trouble than it's worth. Another rocky start leads her to almost being pimped out to an alien prince and being killed by galaxy twins, but not before she is handed literally the most powerful weapon in the world. She then proceeds to save H's job, convince the MIB there's a mole in the department, but they soon find themselves on the run again from their own MIB agents and those pesky galaxy twins. They pick up a new friend named Pawnee, who pledges his life to M, his new queen, and head to meet H's ex-girlfriend Riza, who's a crime girl boss extraordinaire. They make it out and over to the Eiffel Tower, where it's revealed H was neuralized by High T, the boss of the London branch, and daddy-type figure to H, because he's actually the terrifying alien race, the Hive. Now H&M must confront the Hive daddy and save the world for real this time.
H&M saves the world.
H&M save the world.
Mm-hmm.
No more goddamn H&M. A RuPaul quote. Okay. I'd never seen this.
Same.
As a story, just overall, as a story, base level, I really enjoyed it. I just wish, because here's my thing. I loved Molly's story. The backstory of her seeing the alien and her like literally doing everything she can to find them, and then she finally finds them. I wish we got at least 15 more minutes with that. Like the moment she like peeks her head, she sees the pigeons flying through the barrier, and then she peeks her head in. I wish that when she peeked her head in, she just touched the fence, and it was like, fuck. Mm-hmm. I thought I had it. I worked so hard.
I thought that was going to be it too.
I thought it was, because that to me, I'm like, yes, she's working. Have her fail. Like, we need that. She needs that for a story. And then something else happens by happenstance. And then she sees something else. She's like, no, I already know this. But then it works. And she's like, yes, I'm in. The fact that they give it to her immediately, I was like, no, I want more of this. I want more of her backstory. I want more of her, like, not that I want her to struggle, but like, she's already like such a cool character. I love the way she's performing this role. Like, I love everything about this person. I want to see their story, ups and downs, in all of its glory. And I feel like it just happened too fast. Like, take away a lot of the scenes of like Hemsworth, like in the club and like, ooh, yeah, like touch my butt and like wake up with the alien. Like, ooh, we don't need any of that shit. Take that away. Give her more shit to do.
It didn't need to be there.
It didn't need to be there. I'm like, take all that
away.
away.
That one scene had nothing to do. He's playing poker.
It made me so mad, Jess.
And then let's wake up. You'll do anything, and she just like fucks her, and I'm like,
okay.
Why did we spend 10 fucking minutes on this?
10 minutes on this James Bond-esque poker scene
that does not matter to anything. If that alien came back later on and he's like, you owe me or something, like, great, okay, like, tie this in, but it has no fucking payoff. It's just, look at how cool he is.
And you could have done that with a montage of like, he's in Ibiza, shot. He's in Portugal, shot. He's in Australia, shot. Like, he's partying. That's the whole vibe. He's kind of a bad boy. He kind of parties. You could sum that up in 15 seconds. We don't need a 10 to 15 minute fucking scene where this random alien is willing to kill her assumed boyfriend to fuck Chris Hemsworth. Mm-hmm. What? It's Chris, right? This is the Chris?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Wait, now you have
which Hemsworth is it?
It's Chris.
Is it? It's Chris, right? Okay.
Wait, hold on.
Can we look it up? Like... I know I second guessed it in my head, and now suddenly.
Oh my god! And now I'm just it's Chris. It's
Chris.
Hemsworth.
Okay, good. But like
no,
that
it's
whole.
Not.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my god. I'm like, yeah. Okay, you're right. We didn't need any of that. It was so nonsensical. Like, I like from a world building perspective, we're getting some like new character designs. We're getting that cool snake. We're getting this cool game. this liquid he's drinking. Like, I like all of those moments, but it is so pointless to the story, where we're already developing this really great narrative with Molly.
Which everything matters.
And yeah. So to me, I'm like, take away these nonsense scenes just to give Hemsworth space. This is her story. Make her story matter more. Like, I like, especially when all that's happening and then there's this scene that means nothing and matters less than nothing. I'm like, oh, I feel like that was such a waste, because she's so cool and I'm like ready. I'm ready for her.
This whole time I'm watching it and it's so fucking cool because we see her like have this moment when she's a little kid. She's like, cool, I got this. You go here. Like, I'm going to do this. And she's already reading about like quantum physics and like time and stuff like that, which is hilarious coming off of that scene from the first movie. But she's like already into this and she's like very just like, yes, and cool, let's do this. And the next time we see her, she is literally applying to like the FBI, the CIA, and she's like makes her own boxes and she's like, cool, this is actually what I want to do. Oh, this is not who you are? Okay, thank you, goodbye. Like, and she doesn't get the job because she removes herself when she realizes, no, okay, I know exactly what I want. You are not that, so I'm leaving.
And
thanks for your time.
That whole development of character, I'm like, yes, it's so specific. It's so cool. I'm like, she's so fucking sick. She like the FBI's like, yeah, we'll hire you. She's like, but are you hiring me for this? They're like, no. She's like, then never mind. I'm like,
well, but part of me too, right? Because
like, yes!
Look at the MIB, both in we didn't really get to see a lot of the New York branch, right? But we did see a little bit more of the London branch. Mm-hmm. It's all fucking white.
Yeah.
And I loved that Madam O, or like Agent O or whoever, it was like that branch was run by a woman. She fucking knew something was wrong with London. She's like, cool, I'm going to send you over here to do that. I love that women are, and they called out a bunch of times like Men in Black. Like, yeah. And I like that they called that out. They could have done something different, but they were at least acknowledging it.
You know what? I mean, I loved it too, but at the same time, I'm like, where does the movie end up spending most of its time? On Hemsworth, like on these other people. So I'm like, well, the movie's saying the thing that it wants to be doing, but is still doing the thing that's wrong.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm like,
because like, so we see like Tessa Thompson's character, Molly, who like literally has to fucking not have friends, work her ass off, like it has her fucking suit ready at all times, hacks into NASA, does all of this stuff to get this job, to even get a probationary spot in this organization, right? And her like selling point is, I have nothing, I have nobody, you want me, these are the kind of people you want. And we see Hemsworth, who is like the cis het white man that is just a pretty face who fucks everything up and fucks everything and like doesn't have like a lot of substance to him. Like, why is he there? Why is he regarded as like one of their best agents and stuff like that when he literally keeps fucking up? And we see like everybody, like all of the men kind of like protect him except for C, who's like kind of out to get him, which is cool. But like, again, this is like, I feel like that was also a commentary on like women, especially Black women, having to do the most to get into these positions or get ahead, get to where they want to be, and literally being paired with the cis het white man that does nothing, and they literally have to end up doing all of the fucking work, and they both get the praise at the end.
Which is exactly what this story should be. Like, he fails, she saves him, and she's just a probationary person at this job, which is why I'm like, this is supposedly the story that this movie's trying to tell. Why are we pulling from her story then? It's hers. Give her the backstory she deserves. Give us more character with her. Give us more of her world. Why are we pulling it for this nobody nonsense pretty boy? You know what I mean? Like, it just, I'm like, that big disconnect for me is like, well, walk the walk then, y'all. Like, what's the deal? Like, if this is that story about like inequity and like cis het white patriarchy, like, then say it. Then make that the story. Make her the protagonist, not the buddy to the protagonist. make it her fucking story. Like, they already started it. It's already there. There's already the bones of her as the lead, him as the plucky fuck it up sidekick, who is only there because he's pretty and white and a man. That's already there. The bones are already there. We already got it. But they continue to make it more his story than hers, especially with his whole my ex-girlfriend thing, which I'm like, okay, sure, but also,
and she's the only reason why they even get out of that situation, because of her kindness years and years ago,
she's
right?
Literally
and
saving.
She's the reason that the hive is destroyed because of her because of her kindness to Pawnee, right? Who then saves her, and then she like gets the alien, right? But like, I do think that they focus too much on Hemsworth. I still think that this was her movie, though. Like, all of my notes are basically about her. But I mean, they like,
to me, because yes, it is written like she saves the day. She's the reason they get out of that jam. She's the reason they get out of every jam. Her backstory as a child, everything, yes. But they spent so much time with him.
They don't need to. And then at the end, there's like, oh, well, Pawnee's going to watch you because we're like boyfriend, girlfriend now. And I was like, that was very boring. Who was this? Okay, hold on. I need to look up who this was written by, because this feels like it was written by a man.
Yes, two, actually. And they wrote Iron Man. That's their other big claim to fame. They're the screenwriters from Iron Man, yeah.
So that's why they were so insistent on putting Chris Hemsworth in there as this, like, as the character that he is in there, which like, we'll get into that. But like, then like forcing like hey, no, you're together. No, you guys are together. You're a thing.
Just from a thematic standpoint in writing, I'm like, that did make perfect sense when I looked it up. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So this is very much that story. And not to like completely discredit, because I do think like the Molly storyline is really powerful, and I think Tessa sells it so hard.
I think
so. There's like really good. I keep saying bones. There's really good bones here. Like, there really is. But like, they're just. I like Chris Hemsworth. I think he's cool generally. Why is he here? Like, just fucking give it to take him away. Give it to Tessa, and let her like. She obviously was the only interesting part of this movie overall. Let her carry it. She can do it. What the fuck?
He was acting like he was in The Hangover.
That's
kind of how I felt.
It was
like
so he was boring.
Personally, he took me out of the movie a lot, and I do like the two of them together when they're playing and riffing off each other, which they did do in Thor Ragnarok, which was great. But I think in this one they were just so obsessed with making him like this like weird party boy that just wants to like fuck aliens, and which also like, because I do feel like part of that in his character is because he was neuralized, and because we know that there is some sort of brain damage that happens with that, right? And some sort of trauma that like the brain cannot reconcile this thing. And he literally, like, there's paintings of this act that he did on the wall when like he just keeps saying that one line over and over and over again, and he can't dig in. And like, so part of him is trying to reconcile that through sex and alcohol, which, because they say this, like, everybody says, this isn't you. This isn't who you are. This is not the person I remember, right? Something happened. What happened to you? So they're recognizing that something has happened, just not what. And they didn't go the whole way with it. They set it up, and if they would have like followed through with that, I think that would have been I think I wouldn't have been as annoyed with as much screen time as he got, because I think that's a really cool, interesting story. Like, let's talk about how like the practices that the Men in Black use are actually problematic, and the ramifications that it has on literally everybody that it comes into contact with. Let's have this conversation. Let's talk about gaslighting, and let's talk about all of this. But they don't go there. They just kind of like give you this little nugget, but like it's and like they don't even really resolve that or him at all.
They really don't.
And he's rewarded at the end for it, because they're like, oh, well, you should leave London. He's like, no, there's way better people to lead London than me. And they're like, no, there's not. You got it,
queen. And you're like, what is happening?
And you're like, he's so messy. He needs therapy,
he
queen.
He's struggling a lot. And I think you're 100% right. If they'd leaned into that storyline as a part of like an ethical narrative, like a conversation about ethics, would have loved it. And I honestly, and maybe this is just my own bias here, I think if they leaned harder on Molly, we would have gotten that. If he wasn't as much of the lead and just the sidekick, I feel like that would have been his main narrative. And then the scene at the end, when they're in the elevator going up the Eiffel Tower, the way she sells her like worry and sadness for him, when she's like, say it again. And he's like, oh yeah, it was this. And she's like, say it again. And then he says it and it's the same line. She has tears in her eyes.
Yeah.
She feels so sad for him. And so like, there is so much like emotion and like, I feel so bad for you and I want to be there for you. And like, she sells it so hard. But because of the way that it's set up leading to that, it doesn't really land as hard as I feel like that performance should have landed in that elevator, you know? And so I think if that narrative that you're talking about was at the forefront and he was less at the forefront, but that was largely what we talked about with him, way better. Because then she's, I don't know. There's just... Because then, like, we wouldn't have needed that whole fucking dance-off sequence in the club. Like, I loved the car seat. Loved it.
That was fucking cool.
Amazing. Again, some of the world-building stuff and, like, the character dynamic, or not the dynamics, the character art, the character design. A lot of that stuff I was, like, so impressed by. The world-building of it, yes. But that whole sequence with, like, what's his name? That alien who ends up dying and gives them the weapon... That was
why did we do that?
It was A, 3 years long. B, literally the only reason we were there is so he can flirt with her. Because like, be inside, have a 2-minute conversation about everything. Watch them poison him. Get outside. Why are the twins dancing? Having a dance off? That makes no sense. Also, when they like. These are just like little bits that I think.
Why are the aliens still people of color?
Yeah, and like what? Like why?
Why aren't we? They just say like the subtitle speaks foreign language, but it is clearly like.
Yeah, it's a weird caricature situation, which no thanks.
Like it's everywhere in the Middle East. Like where are we? What are we doing? Like what? And we're terrorizing this town in the Middle East. Like, sure, of course. Like, the London branch is here terrorizing this town.
Terrorizing Marrakesh.
Why the fuck are they here? Yeah. Like, So, there's a lot of grossness with this.
It's a lot of grossness.
And it really... That bothered me. And the twins, like, that whole thing, like, was a cool dynamic and a cool thought. But, like... Why were they killing people to get that thing? Like, I didn't understand if they were just trying to save their species or whatever with that gun. Why were they being terrors to everybody?
Yeah,
that didn't make sense.
That's such an unearned narrative. That's such an unearned like villain. They like didn't explain them. The designs were incredible. These like galaxy twins
so good.
Where they like break open and suddenly they are everything and you're like, this is amazing. The way that they kill, scary as fuck. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ, terrifying. But who the fuck are they? And why are they here? And why are they killing people? None of like, yeah, sure, they're trying to get this to save their like. It just the development of those characters specifically was so unearned. And so unthought. Like, I feel like the only character, and thankfully, the only character that they really spent any time developing was Molly, which is why I'm like, give her the fucking movie. Just like, you're already doing it. You're already making this her thing. Stop spending time with these nobodies and write better small parts for them. Don't try to give these big parts to these people who really don't matter. It's her story. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. It made me so mad. I was just like, I'm so much more. She's so cool. Like the way she goes to Hemsworth's desk and like catches him sleeping. And then the way she like kind of gaslights him into bringing her along or like coerces him into bringing her along. And like the look on her face when she walks away, she's like, yes, I got it. And then he's like, oh, and then when he's like, oh wait, maybe you come back, and like she's like, yes, and she turns around like so cool and collected, like, yes,
yeah.
And you're like, she is so developed and interesting and cool, and like, I don't care about Liam Neeson. I don't care about Hemsworth. I don't care. I mean, I care kind of
I do
about
love that the real bad guy was a white man.
Yes, same.
At the top. That was
Same.
like, yeah. So that was, but like we didn't really develop him as a villain at all. We didn't even develop the Hive at all. What the fuck was the Hive? Like that kind of came out of nowhere.
It felt so disjointed.
We had to spend 84 years with Chris Hemsworth making sure that we knew that he was a party dude, and then we had to have Tessa Thompson go talk to his ex-girlfriend, who he gaslit, and he even told Tessa, he's like, oh, I mean, like, whatever, it wasn't even a thing. And then the truth comes out where he's like, well, actually, you were the assignment, but I did fall in love with you, blah, 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 blah,
yeah.
right? And I'm just like, first of all, Riza, your hair is hella cool. Riza?
Her wig was great. Yeah.
Hella cool. But two, why are we here?
Why are we here? Literally, why are we here? Yeah. That's the biggest question I had was, who is she? Love her character. Love the idea of her. She doesn't belong in this movie. We shouldn't be on her island. Why are we here? It's
also,
only
why was
so
it
we can
so fucking easy for them to get on and off the island?
They didn't, like, it's supposed to be this top secret security, and they didn't check the rest of the fucking boat. Bullshit.
And she had cameras. We saw the fucking cameras.
And she had cameras. And so what? Like, somebody's just not at the desk and they don't, like, it's so bogus. It's bogus as fuck. There are so many moments like that, like, also, okay, you know what? Let's just dive in. The train. I have a problem with this train because...
Really?
Why? Well, because when it showed up in the station, it looks like a regular train station.
Yeah.
Obviously to, like, hide. It's being covert.
But it's also under MIB, which is silly.
It's under MIB, and there's aliens walking around, and then it transforms where it's like, oh, so now we're like, can do the alien thing. I'm like, no, you would do that in a regular station, but this is the alien station. And then later, it never transforms
transforms again. Yeah.
And I'm like, you only did that so you can do the train sequence. It did not make sense. There's so many different easy ways to make that happen.
And, like, I love...
Mess. Made me so mad.
Like, yeah, just change it back. That's a quick, just change it. Like, that's fine.
Or do
and
a sequence.
I love this, like, shadow kind of, like, top secret, like, you know, super, like, I loved that kind of, like, visual world building that they were doing.
Yeah.
But then, like, it was just kind of like, okay, what?
Maybe it was an editing thing. Maybe there was a sequence in there that just didn't make it, and it was, like, already running along because they... Again, do have a lot of storylines, like the Camille on Johnny stuff as a sidekick. You have Tessa's whole backstory. You have Hemsworth's backstory. You have this,
do you know that editing can ruin a good movie?
It really can. So part of me thinks, like, that couldn't have been an oversight. Like, it seems like something so small. I don't know. As a whole, I think I did still enjoy it. And really... Like, I liked the dynamic with and I'm going to just, I know he's not out, but the gay one, the sidekick who was jealous of Hemsworth and was always like, yes. And that moment, okay, I don't know if you felt this, but when C finds out that it's not Hemsworth, right, and that it's Liam Neeson, and they're like, oh, we figured it out, they're at the party. And when Hemsworth runs away and he's like, oh, just tell him that I was the mole. Like, that whole sequence, there was some sexual tension.
Ooh.
They both, like, from both of them. Because obviously from C, because he's, like, canonically now gay in my version of this story. He is very gay and very in love with Hemsworth. Hemsworth was giving it right back. And there's this moment where I was like, do they kiss in this movie? And then they don't, obviously. But did you notice that at all? Am I just wildly out of...
You know what? I wasn't looking out for it.
Oh my God.
For that at that exact moment. But I mean, now in my headcanon, that's exactly what it is.
It's kind of like his eyes are a little bit welled up, and he's like, to me, I feel like this is a moment they may not see each other ever again. Hemsworth is leaving, and I felt like he's about to say, like, I've always loved you. Or something. You know what I mean? Like, he may never see him again. And that's where I feel like the performance was coming from. So I was like... But
is that why they had to reiterate at the end that it was straight?
Maybe there was just too much sexual tension between them and they had to make sure.
Oh my God. Yes.
Mess. I mean, ideally that's where it would be, but...
I mean, I'm very here for that. I don't think I have anything else to say about this movie.
I don't either. Is this going to be a short little episode? I kind of love that.
I think it is. I mean, like, if it was just Tessa Thompson's movie 100%, or if I, like, dove into, like, Hemsworth's trauma, cool, but...
Iconic.
It wasn't there.
It wasn't there. All right, well, let's scoot on to the outro.
So... We went to MIB headquarters. We came back. Eric.
We didn't remember a goddamn thing.
We were neuralized, and now we're going to drink and have lots of sex with everybody.
With aliens. We're going to, whatever. Ugh.
With all the aliens.
Yeah.
Who was the 1997 version for?
It was for white, patriotic American men. That's literally who it was for. And cops. And it was for cops. Absolutely. White American patriotic men and cops. Boom. Who do you think it was for?
Yeah. I mean, like, truly. Shit.
That's what it felt like. That's literally what it felt like.
I mean, this watch is exactly like, I mean, that first scene was just so fucking messy. Like, I could not believe that was the first scene. I was like, I paused the movie and I was like, really? Is this what we're doing? Is this where we're starting? Holy shit. So, yeah, no, that's 100% who it was for. Did you like it?
You know what? This is one of those moments where, like, I have to dig deep in my soul. I know that it's not very good, but nostalgia is really driving my interest in it still, even after critique. And I'm still going to say I like it. I do still like it. I am still into it. That's unfortunately going to be my answer.
I like that you, unfortunately, this is going to be my answer.
Because it is true, but I also understand why it's bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get it. I understand it, but I still like it. Yeah.
I think, so I went into this movie being, like, stoked, just like, hell yeah. Not only is this going to be, like, an easy week, like, it's going to be, like, a break. It's going to be so great. But I went to this and I was like, I'm going to like this. Yeah. Not thinking about what the story is, or just like, yeah, I like this. I like it a lot less now. Like, before it would be like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, let's Men in Black is on, let's watch this. No, I don't think I'd ever have that. I don't think I'm gonna watch that movie again.
Yeah, I know.
It's a big, like, I will rewatch my favorite parts, which are the uppercut.
Uppercut. Yeah.
I'll rewatch like that on YouTube. I don't need to sit through this whole thing again.
Just a Vincent D'Onofrio supercut.
Yes. Oh my god, the way he moved his body, just
it's literally
incredible.
I know that, like, I don't know if this movie got, like, nominated for anything, but his performance, Oscar worthy. I'm, like, not even kidding. Character work, give it to that man. Give it to him now. He's so good in this movie.
Yeah, so good. I mean, all of his character work. I know we were talking about this off the pod, but, like, I did not realize that he was Kingpin.
It's like, you know what? I'm just going to do it real quick. I'm going to pull up what he's been in, because it's literally so, like, wild. Oh, he was in Full Metal Jacket.
Okay.
He was also in Adventures in Babysitting, Mystic Pizza. He was in Men in Black. He's been in a ton of stuff, but I'm only doing... Oh, he was in The Cell. He played the bad guy in The Cell.
Oh, my God. I just saw I didn't realize the tagline for Men in Black was protecting the Earth from the scum of the universe.
Literally. It's all... Isn't that gross? Isn't that gross?
Yeah, I'm never watching this again.
Yeah, that's... You know what? That might be the last straw for me, too. That was actually not good.
I'm never watching this again. Oh, he was also in Ed Wood?
Yeah, he was also in Jurassic World.
Oh, I guess,
he was the bad guy. Yeah. Magnificent Seven. He was just in The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which we just watched, which was fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we got it. But, oh, God, he is so talented. It's insane. Okay. This is a Vincent D'Onofrio Stan account now. We've decided.
Oh, man. Okay, so now 2019, Men in Black International. Mm-hmm. Was it new, interesting, or the same, progressive, or regressive?
I think it was new in the way that it pushed the story forward, but also tried to establish a new story. And I also thought it was interesting the way that like Tessa grew up trying to get into the MIB. Like that's like a way more interesting than just like a happenstance cop to me. I thought that was way more interesting of a motivation of like a driven character. It's not happenstance, it's like intention. And I'm like, ooh, I want to know that character more. I thought it was pretty progressive, just like, again, in the way that it like recognized like men. It was very clearly like a conversation about that, and there was it was progressive, but not to me progressive enough. I feel like they skirted that a little bit just to get like feminism points, which felt a little bit disingenuous. Because like they just could have done so much more. But from the first one, I do think it was progressive. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it was new. I think it was interesting. Some of the world building that they were trying to do. It was the same enough where it's like, cool,
Yeah.
This is still Men in Black. It was a little bit it was still progressive, but maybe in more of a regressive way, like performative progressiveness.
Yeah.
Because the aliens were still people of color. The white people were still in charge of Men in Black. They kept mentioning like, why isn't the women in black, huh? And there's like that awkward thumbs up moment from fucking Hemsworth where is like, cool, you recognize that this is bad, but you are still being performative about it because you're not actually taking any action. You're just acknowledging the fact that this is bad and not inclusive, right? It had this really cool like moment. Like, I love Molly, loved everything about her, but coupled with Hemsworth and the way that they told his story, like they could have made it really cool. Like, you know, this big strong hunk guy that everybody loves is vulnerable and had something traumatic and awful happen to him. Like, normalize talking about that or like dealing with that or recognizing that. But instead of like trying to have any sort of moment with that, again, they just kind of recognize it for a second and move the fuck on.
Yeah.
And we don't see him deal with it. We see Tessa deal with it. We see her tears in her eyes. Well, he's just like, he's so numb to it,
Yeah.
you know, because we can't see big, strong man cry.
Yeah. Because big, strong man cry is not sexy. And he's got to be sexy.
It could be sexy, though.
No, I mean, like, the language of the movie is like, oh, no, if he cries, he's not hot anymore. He's got to be hot.
There's this great scene in Ted Lasso season 2. I haven't finished it, but Keely and the retired football player get together, and the one that's like, fuck. And he's like, he's totally this man's man, right? And he like catches her masturbating one day. And he's like, oh, what gets you off, babe? And he's like, goes and looks, and it's him crying on TV on his last football game. And he is like, he is just fucking like weeping, like, and it was like the ugly cry, right? And she's like,
iconic.
And she's like, it just, I don't know. And he's like, what the fuck? And then like at the end of the episode, he's like, I got you. And he's like, give me your phone. And he pulls it up and he gives it to her and he goes down on her while she's watching that. And he's like just embracing this for her. And
oh
I'm
my
just
God.
like, I
That's
love
sweet.
that moment.
Yeah.
But we can have these moments, y'all.
We 100% could. I don't think that this movie has the emotional intelligence or the emotional integrity to make that happen. But yeah, like, it is possible.
Let's change it. Women in Black, thumbs up.
God, it was just so, it was so haphazard. Like, oh shit, we need, like, it felt so disingenuous. It was so blah.
It felt very, it felt like it was trying to be progressive, but it was just incredibly performative, which made it regressive.
Yeah.
In those ways.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Tessa was she should be running the show.
It's her movie. Give her more time. What the fuck? She was like it. She was it. It's her movie.
She was the it girl.
It just made me so mad. Like, it would have been way better if they just write the movie like it's her movie, and it would have been better. Ugh.
Who was it for?
Performative feminists.
I'm going to say performative male feminists.
Ooh, that's even better. That's actually even better. Yeah.
I just was reminded, I think it was shit you should care about, or one of those accounts that like posted a bunch of dudes wearing the gray shirt that says this is what feminist looks like.
Oh my god.
In like 2014, and it's like Benedict Cumberbatch and like 5 other guys, and I was
the classics.
This is who this movie was for. Did you like it?
I liked it enough. I thought parts of it were good. As a whole, it was fine. Yeah, I liked it. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it enough. I would watch it again, mostly because of my love for Tessa Thompson, and because of how strong her character was. Absolutely 100. Like I'd watch it just because I love to see her just command the whole scene.
Oh yeah.
It was fine.
It was fun. I feel the same.
I thought it was fun.
It was
like
fun.
If I wasn't like analyzing it critically, I'd just along for the wacky ride, I'd be like, okay, cool, we're here. All right, and we're here.
We're doing it.
We're okay, cool, you know. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. Anyways.
Oh, well, I think, is that it? We did it?
We did it. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you can, and give us a bunch of love and stars because it really helps us, and we appreciate it all the time.
100%. All the time. We need attention.
Oh, absolutely.
Our music and artwork are by Eric Lefebvre. Our editing is by Danny Barkley. And thanks again for listening, everyone. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit the NOTstalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Jake.
And we are the band Lousy Advice from the Lousy Advice Podcast.
Come listen as we draft artist and genre-centric best of lists.
With the help of our closest friends.
These lists are canon.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
From Misfits to Cher.
Green Day to Gaga.
Or Pup to Paramore.
Listen to the Lousy Advice Podcast now, or else.
Stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget that we are the band Lousy Advice, and this is our podcast, the Lousy Advice Podcast.
The Lousy Advice Podcast?
The Lousy Advice Podcast.